What's up, guys? This is Dave Marshall with the RC Air Marshal YouTube channel, and I am excited to be here today with the XFly Sirius. We're going to be doing a full review on this brand new 80mm EDF Sport Jet from a brand new company. Before we get started, if you like what we're doing here on the channel, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. That way you're always made aware when we have new videos come out on the channel. Stay tuned for the full review on the XFly Sirius. Let's roll that intro. All right, guys, so as we said in the beginning, we're here with the all-new XFly Sirius 80mm Sport Jet. This thing is pretty bad to the bone. I have really enjoyed flying it. I've enjoyed being able to, really look over it, do probably one of the first build videos to be seen, and you can find a link to that right up here. So be sure to check out that build video. We did that at Jet Jam early in the year up in Indiana. And I have to tell you guys, I am really impressed with this freshman effort from a brand new company to our hobby. I think over the course of this review, you're going to find it pretty evident that these guys, this is not their first rodeo. These are veterans in the foam airplane industry, and these guys know what they're doing. So don't be afraid of the idea of buying a brand new airplane from a brand new company. These guys know what they're doing, and the XFly Sirius is a perfect example of a foam airplane done right. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is the appearance of the XFly Sirius. I have to admit that when I first saw pictures of it, I wasn't that thrilled with it, but I got to tell you, the more I look at it, the more I see it in person, just being able to feel like the application, you can't feel, the separation and the paint lines, the application of the decals, everything on this model was done very well. The paint is much more attractive in person. I know that sounds weird, but it's something that you hear a lot in this hobby. It's hard to convey, whether through digital media, video, photography, whatever the case may be, it's hard to convey just how attractive an airplane is. Some of them look great in pictures. Some of them, look a little odd, and I think that the lines of the model, there's not a real good angle to take pictures of this airplane because it's a very unique type of fuselage shape. So it looks kind of weird, as you're looking at it. But I'll tell you, when you're looking at it in person, up front, and close, this is a beautiful, beautiful model. The paint is very well executed. The foam is extremely smooth. So on the white areas of the model, it's not painted, so you can see the cells of the foam, but even in those white areas, that foam is still really smooth. On the painted areas where you have the red and the blues, those areas are also very smooth. The paint is very well executed, and for the most part, you can't even tell that there are foam cells underneath it. Now, that to me is the sign of a very well executed paint job, very well done paint preparation. XFly did a fantastic job in finishing these models and applying the decals. So all the stars, one of the things that I like to see is when there's care taken in what the model company is doing and how they're executing on it. When I see things like water slides that are very well applied, no wrinkles, whoever installed these water slide decals, they cared about what they were doing. And that goes a long way with me. When you can show me signs during the manufacturing process that the people that were putting the model together cared as much about this model and the manufacturing of the model as I'm going to care about it as the end user, that means a lot to me and says a lot about the company putting the model together. So overall, I think the appearance of the model is absolutely fantastic. It actually looks great in person. Now, next I want to move on to the construction of the XFly Sirius. And I think that what we're going to find throughout some of these different bullet points is that these guys know what they are doing. There are a lot of very well executed construction techniques that were performed in this model, and I think that that goes a long way to show that XFly, although they may be a new model company to us, these guys are veterans of this industry, and this is a well-executed airframe. So one of the things that I always like to see on all of the areas where it could get nicked up, areas that are prone to getting dented, scratched, whatever the case may be, you've got nice plastic shrouding around those areas. So you've got that plastic shrouding around the leading edges of the intakes. You've got plastic couplers where the screws go in and where those wing surfaces mate as the wings bolt to the fuselage. Those are plastic in there. The plastic servo covers are a nice touch. It keeps the paint looking nice and uniform and makes it very easy to swap those servos out. Everywhere around the model, you've got ball links for your control rods. So they're ball links at the control surface and Z-bends at the servo horn. But they work very well and they don't allow for a lot of play in those control surfaces. The struts are beautiful aluminum trailing link struts. They've got nice travel and they absorb a lot of that shock. You've got a nice wide stance landing gear, so it's going to be very easy and very stable on the runway, both on takeoffs and landings. And I really like what they've done with the landing gear. It's very nice. All right, the foam that they used in this model, in addition to being nice and smooth, it's also very rigid, which I like in a model like this. It's still going to allow for that natural wing flex that we need for models, but it's not going to be so flexible that it's going to alter the flight characteristics, and it's actually going to contribute greatly to how smooth and true this aircraft flies through the air. And we'll get to that when we get to the flight characteristics, but I can tell you right now, this thing flies fantastic. Up underneath the canopy, you've got a very spacious battery compartment which can accommodate a wide range of batteries. Now, for the flights that I've done so far with the Sirius, I've been using the Spektrum smart batteries, the 5050C 6S packs, and I've also been using the Roaring Top 5000 6S 45C packs, and both of them have offered fantastic performance. You've got plenty of room under the canopy to move those batteries around and get everything exactly where you need it to achieve that CG that you're looking for. Continuing under the canopy, we've also got this very well executed receiver tray that's right in the back of the battery compartment. It sits just high enough. It's over a multifunction board where all of your servo lines for your control surfaces all come into that multifunction board, and your light switches, all of that stuff comes right into that multifunction board, and your 6 connectors that go into your receiver all come right out of that multifunction board, similar to some different colored boxes that we might see from other manufacturers. This multifunction board has all 6 of your connectors. You plug them straight into your receiver, you bind up, and you're ready to go. The screws that they're using for the horizontal stabilizers and the wings, they're nice countersunk hex drive machine screws. As always, anytime you're doing something with the hex drive screws, I always recommend using the MIP hex drivers or their speed drivers, their speed tips that you can use on like a Ryobi electric screwdriver. If you're going to be using any kind of hex drive screws, I highly recommend using those, and you can find links down in the description for where you can pick up your own set of MIP hex drivers or MIP speed tips. I also like the quick connector that they're using on the wings. They're using what's called a D-sub 9-pin connector. Some of you guys that are familiar with electronics have seen this on serial ports on computers for decades. It's a proven connector. It goes together well inside the airframe. When you plug those wings in, they mate right together. It's high density. It does exactly what we need it to do, and we don't have any kind of proprietary pieces in there, so it's going to be real nice and easy to source new connectors in the event that these fail. All right, so next up, let's talk about the electronics package of the XFly Sirius. And one thing that I have to say right out of the gate is how quiet the servos are. The servos in our elevator, our rudder, our ailerons, our flaps, some of the quietest servos that I've heard in an airplane. And these aren't cheap servos. These are Metal Gear servos, which are typically a little on the loud side, and these things are just whisper quiet. I really like them. In addition to quiet servos, it's also got really quiet retracts. And while we may not be able to fully appreciate it in the air, you know, at least in my opinion, in order to achieve that, that took some level of engineering to get a very smooth, a very quiet drive mechanism inside those servos. So again, kudos to the team at XFly for sourcing some of the quietest servos I've heard and some fantastic retracts. We've already mentioned the multifunction board, but it's worth mentioning again. Immediately under the receiver tray, there's a multifunction board where all your control surface servos, so your ailerons, your elevators, your flaps, you know, everything is going to come into there. The only thing that doesn't is your ESC. So coming out of the multifunction board, you've got your flaps, your ailerons, your elevator, your rudder, and your retracts. So your gear pin is all coming out of there, ready to plug right into your receiver. It already does everything that you need as far as keeping the rudder and the front steering servo on that same channel so they move together, and everything just works the way that you would expect it to. There's no kind of crazy programming that you need to do inside your receiver at all, and so far I haven't had any issues with that multifunction board at all. It's very conveniently located, and you just need to run those wires up to the receiver tray, plug everything in, and you're ready to go. It's very nice, very clean. And lastly, let's talk about the power system that's included in the XFly Sirius. This is going to come with some new components that XFly have been developing. This includes a 2200 kV in-runner system, 12-blade EDF fan, and a 100 amp ESC. Now, in all the flights that I've done on the Sirius so far, I haven't had any issues with the ESC, and the fan unit has proven to be extremely strong. I'm very impressed with the performance from the power system so far. Next up in my reviews would be the difficulty of assembly. I have to tell you, the XFly Sirius is one of the easiest models that I have ever put together out of the box. It is so simple. You simply put your wings on. So you've got your wings bar that you slide through the fuselage. You slide your wings on. They've got those quick, D-sub 9-pin connectors on them. You just slide those into the sockets, put your 4 screws in, you're done with the wings. You've got 4 screws that hold your horizontal stabs in place. You slide the horizontal stabs in, you're going to need to plug in a servo lead. Those servo leads that the horizontal stabs plug into for the elevator servos already have the little clips installed on them. You can see those again in the build video that we linked to in the beginning, and there's also a link down in the description. You'll be able to see those. You tuck those in, slide in your horizontal stabs, you put in your 4 screws, and you are done. Your vertical stab is already molded into the fuselage, so you don't need to do anything with the vertical stab. The only other part that you need to install, so you've got your 8 screws, 4 for the wings, 4 for the horizontal stabs. You've got your ventral fins that slide on like ordnance. Very, very simple and straightforward build, and everything goes together perfectly. Next up, we're going to talk about some things that I really like about the XFly Sirius. All right, one thing that I've noticed is that the paint scheme is very visible. It makes it very easy to keep your orientation of this airplane. So we've got our red, white, and blue finish on the top, which is highly visible in the air. And when we look at the bottom of the model, we can see that it's all white and blue. So there's a very distinct change and difference in the color scheme between the top and the bottom, which makes the model very easy to keep your orientation of while it's flying. All right, the other thing that I really liked about the Sirius, and I was very surprised because typically when I fire up a model for the first time and you get those servos centered up, your control surfaces, especially on surfaces that have already, the linkages have already been made at the factory, you fire up the model, the servo center, and you find out that you have to do a little bit of weird work. And that's okay. But what I found with the Sirius, that everything was adjusted perfectly right at the factory. So somebody, whoever was hooking up these models, either the servos were perfectly centered when they took them out of the box or took them out of their OEM packaging and installed them in the plane, or somebody there took the time to power up the servo, center it up, attach the control rod, and get it centered up for us where we don't have to take that little bit of extra effort in setting up our model. Now, if this is a trend that we continue to see from XFly, that is a very nice touch, and another one of those things that I can truly appreciate, just like the application of the decals, that extra touch that they take during the setup process, that means a lot to me, and I think it may mean a lot to you guys as well. Now, the last thing that I'm going to touch on as far as the things that I really love about the XFly Sirius is just the overall general construction of this airplane. It is executed so well. You know, the way that they have the plastics set up, the way that they have everything just right. So when I start sliding those pieces in, when I go to put it together, everything just goes together so smooth, and there's nothing that I had to work on at all. There were no changes that needed to be made. There was nothing that I felt was deficient or anything that I had to do extra during the build process. It was one of the smoothest planes out of the box that I've had the opportunity to put together yet. Not only do I like the overall construction of the airplane, you know, with the great foam, nice, rigid, firm, great paint. The electronics are fantastic. The other thing that I really like is the inclusion of that D-sub 9-pin serial connector. Now, why would that make such a big difference to me? This goes along with something that we've been seeing, some trends that we've been seeing in modeling for quite a while. We'll see companies that, in an effort to save money, they will cut corners. So we'll see things like paint schemes that maybe aren't as elaborate, a little bit of less care taken in decal application at the factory. You know, maybe the lines are a little sloppy. Maybe we don't have screws tightened up where we would expect those screws to be tightened up. Maybe we have, you know, wires routed kind of sloppy. Things aren't so clean. That's not the case with XFly. Everything that I have seen has been very well executed. And one of the reasons for that, I think, is rather than go and design a proprietary connector, they used a proven industry standard with that D-sub 9. It's a high density connector, so they can connect a lot of different components inside the wing and still be able to use that same connector. It's a proven design. We've been using it for decades, and they didn't have to pay a dime to engineer that. So the costs for designing and engineering and manufacturing a proprietary pin to put in there for that quick disconnect, because they decided to use something that's an industry standard that's been used for decades, that's a proven design, they didn't have to engineer that, so they were able to save a bunch of money in engineering costs and pass those savings along to us. Again, another one of those very smart things that XFly is doing that really shows me that these guys care about this industry, they know what they're doing in this hobby, and I expect to see some fantastic things coming from these guys in the future. Now, the only complaint that I have about the XFly Sirius, and this is not a knock on XFly, it's not a knock on the model. If you go by the book for the elevators, they want you to have the Z-bend in the outermost hole of the servo horn. For me, this is my personal opinion, not a knock on the model at all. Nothing wrong with the model. I have no complaints. But to me, the book call out to put the servo horn connector, the Z-bend for that control rod in the outermost hole, makes it a little bit sensitive in high rates, and I prefer to not have that much sensitivity. So you can either knock that down in Expo. So the method that I used to correct that was to physically move that control rod from the outermost hole to one hole in. So I just moved it by one hole closer to the center of the servo horn, and that was able to calm down that sensitivity quite a bit, and that's just my preferred method for taking care of things like that, rather than throwing a whole bunch of Expo at it or cutting the travel electronically. If I can fix things mechanically, that's my usual preferred method, so I can retain all of the resolution of the servo. All right, so we talked about the appearance, we've talked about the construction, we've talked about the electronics package, we've talked about the assembly, we've talked about some things that I like, we've talked about the one thing that I dislike, which isn't even really worth mentioning, but I feel like I'm being disingenuous if I say that I loved all of it, right? That was the only thing that I didn't like, was the elevator was a little too sensitive when you go by the books. So with all that out of the way, let's head over to the field and take a look at this thing flying, and stay tuned for after the flight, where we'll discuss the flight characteristics and close out the video. The CG on this plane is about 140 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing, which is about right there. I'm running a Roaring Top. It's a 45C 5000 milliamp pack, and I've got about a finger width between that front wall and the pack. So it's back maybe about a ½ inch from that front wall to get me that CG where I want it. Okay, so that's the flight of the all-new XFly Sirius Sport Jet. During the flight, the only thing that I noticed that I would probably like a little more of, so like I had mentioned before, I have adjusted the elevator where it's not quite as sensitive on the pitch axis, but I would like a little more roll rate, so I may add a little more rate to the ailerons. You know, by shifting the point on the ailerons where it connects to the control rod up to the innermost hole of the aileron control rod. And if that doesn't give me the roll rate I'm looking for, I'll probably add a little more in the radio, bump the rates up from 100% where they're at now to maybe 110, or maybe try 125 to get a little better roll rate out of it. All right, so that's the flight of the XFly Sirius, some clips that we took at the field. Let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. Now, I'm gonna tell you the flight characteristics of the Sirius, in my opinion. To me, this is a very smooth flying model. It's got very smooth roll rates, even in high rates. I never felt like I needed to come out of high rates for the ailerons at all. It felt nice and smooth and tracked very well. Like we mentioned before the flight video, in my opinion, in high rates, the elevator was a bit too pitchy for me, so I did tame that down by moving the servo horn control rod points inward by one hole and that tamed that right down. Now, while it's not necessarily a flight characteristic, I'll tell you my opinion again. The 12-blade EDF unit that they're using in these XFly models sounds absolutely fantastic. Something else that's really cool is XFly is also releasing those for individual sale. So if you like what you hear from these XFly models and you like the performance that you're getting out of these XFly fan units, they're going to have these individually available for you to install those in all of your EDF models. Now, as we talked about a little earlier, this thing absolutely tracks straight and true through the air. It doesn't ride tail heavy, it doesn't ride nose heavy, it tracks nice and true, and you can get very nice scale rolls and scale turns. But the other thing that I really love about it is if you want to throw it around like a Banshee, you can absolutely do that as well. This thing is a very good performing airframe, and you can do whatever you want with it. Now, to be fair, I am using the Spektrum AR637T receiver with both AS3X and Safe. Now, during the flight video, I turned on Safe in the air just to test that function out, but I did not leave it in Safe. I did also fly it with the AS3X stabilization turned off, and it still handles very true and very well and predictable, even with the AS3X turned off. However, having that AS3X turned on really just kind of smooths out some of that bumpiness from turbulence. So I do have that. That may have contributed to just how smooth this airplane was performing. And as always, if you're interested in picking up one of the AR637T receivers, you can check the description down below. We're going to have links in the description for the AR637T that I was using in the XFly Sirius. And if you're interested in learning how to program the AR637T, you can check out our AR637T programming series right here. Now, the nice struts and trailing link suspension on the XFly Sirius give it excellent grass handling capabilities. I wouldn't recommend flying it in very rough grass, but if you've got a nice manicured field, the XFly Sirius is going to be able to handle that field no problem. All right, so to wrap up, let me just say the XFly Sirius, I mean, it's something that bears repeating because it is true. XFly is a brand new company. The Sirius is their first plane that they put into production, and they have really hit a home run with this thing. This is a very impressive first effort from a company that's trying to break into the foam model industry. I think they've done a fantastic job, and I'm really looking forward to what XFly brings. I think that XFly is going to do great things for our industry, for our hobby, not just through their own efforts, but by forcing all the other companies that they're competing with to step their game up, because we've got a new player in town. XFly is going to make everything better through hefty competition, and that is a good thing for us. Now, if you are interested in picking up an XFly Sirius, they are available right now through my good friends at BitGo Hobby. And we're going to have links down in the description where you can go right now today and order an XFly Sirius. It will ship direct from the factory to your door, and it'll take about a week to get there. It will cost you about $60 in shipping if you want to pick one up right now. But if you are willing to wait for a few months, once they come into the United States, as always, BitGo will be offering free shipping for you to get your XFly Sirius. But we have no idea how long the wait is going to be before we see those hit the U.S. shores. Now, those links to the XFly Sirius and all the other links down in the description, those are affiliate links. And when you click them, they pay a small commission back to the channel at no additional cost to you. And we really appreciate when you guys use those because they support the channel a lot more than you'll ever know. For other ways that you can support the RC Air Marshal YouTube channel, head over to rcairmarshal.com. And all of our affiliate partners are there. We've got affiliate partnerships with Horizon Hobby. We've got BitGo Hobby. We've got Amazon links. We've got Banggood links. Everything that you can need to change your RC life is going to be available right there. We also have a PayPal link there if you want to make direct contributions to the channel. We really appreciate your support and welcome you to go to rcairmarshal.com for all of your RC needs. That's going to be it for this one, guys. I'm really excited for XFly. I'm excited about the Sirius. I'm excited to see everything that XFly is going to be bringing to the table. My understanding is that they've got a lot of models in their lineup already. They're just waiting to release them. I am excited to see what they bring to the table. As we said in the beginning, If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss another video here on the RC Air Marshal YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.